Hello. Today's reading is from the book of Exodus, and I'm going to read Exodus chapter 16, verses 11 to 30. Exodus 16, verses 11 to 30. The Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. That evening quail came and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the dew was gone, thin flakes like frost on the ground appeared on the desert floor. When the Israelites saw it, they said to each other, What is it? For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, It is the bread the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Everyone is to gather as much as they need. Take an omer for each person you have in your tent. The Israelites did as they were told. Some gathered much, some little. And when they measured it by the omer, the one who gathered much did not have too much, and the one who gathered little did not have too little. Everyone had gathered just as much as they needed. Then Moses said to them, No one is to keep any of it until morning. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Each morning everyone gathered as much as they needed, and when the sun grew hot, it melted away. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person, and the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. He said to them, This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning. So they saved it until morning, as Moses commanded, and it did not stink or get maggots in it. Eat it today, Moses said, because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day to gather it, but they found none. Then the Lord said to Moses, How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one is to go out. So the people rested on the 7th day. So a couple of weeks ago, I was talking about prayer and the importance of prayer in the life of Jesus, and the way that as disciples of Jesus, we have to model ourselves on him. So if prayer was a priority in Jesus' life, it also needs to be a priority in our lives too. And so I was talking about setting aside time every day for spending time with our Father God in prayer, reading the Bible, cultivating holy habits that then help us to stay close to God throughout the rest of the day, and also to be able to know what our priority should be for our lives. Cultivating holy habits. So today I'm going to be talking about another holy habit, which is also, I believe, one that's absolutely vital for our lives. And even though I've actually been a Christian since I was a very small child, I've only really started to realise the huge importance of this one over the last few years. What is this holy habit? Well, it's the practice of Sabbath, or in other words, having a weekly rhythm of work and rest. So what does Sabbath mean? Well, it's basically the practice of taking 1 day in every 7 as a day of rest and worship. And this is a practice that is baked into the very fabric of creation. So if we look at the very first book in the Bible, Genesis, what do we see in that first chapter? We see God creating the heavens and the earth in all their vast array. And then what does he do? This is the very end of Genesis 1 and the beginning of Genesis 2. It says, by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on the seventh day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it he rested from all the work of creating that he had done. That's amazing. The Creator God, who has just created light and darkness, separated the seas from the dry land. He's put the sun, moon and stars in their places. He's made the plants, animals, birds, fish, creepy crawlies, and finally human beings, male and female, in his own image. What does he do then? He rests. He rests. And it says that he blesses that day. And it says it's a holy day. So this is the pattern that is set right at the beginning of creation. And this pattern becomes a pattern that is laid down then for God's chosen people, the Israelites. God commands them to keep this pattern of 6 days for work and 1 for rest. He commands them to keep the Sabbath day. And this is one of the 10 commandments. So this is from the 10 commandments, Exodus 20 verses 8 to 11. Says this, remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labour and do all your work, but the 7th day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son and daughter, nor your male and female servant, nor your animals, nor any foreigner residing in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea and all that is in them, but he rested on the 7th day. Therefore the Lord blessed the 7th day and made it holy. Of course, things have changed over the years, and the day that the people of Israel celebrated it, on which Jews and some Christians still celebrate it, was a Saturday. But Christians have now usually come to celebrate this day of rest on a Sunday, because that was the day on which Jesus rose from the dead. So it's a day of worship and rejoicing and celebrating new life and resurrection. Now, especially in Wales, perhaps, I think the Sabbath has had a bit of a bad press, because in the old days there was a real kind of legalism about keeping the Sabbath. And people used to get so het up about Sundays that they kind of went a bit far with it. And it became, like I said, really legalistic and judgmental as well. So Sunday was basically the day when you weren't allowed to play if you were a child. And you had to dress up in uncomfortable clothes and go to chapel maybe 3 times in a day. And you weren't allowed to have fun. And if anyone caught you mowing the lawn or hanging your washing out on a Sunday, well, that would set tongues wagging. And it was legalistic. And really just like another form of slavery, when actually keeping Sabbath is supposed to be about rest and about freedom. So I'm glad in some ways that we've moved away from that kind of Sabbath keeping. But I think that what's happened is now the pendulum has swung way too far in the other direction. And that is sadly what so often happens. And now we're just super busy. Our work overflows into our rest time. We have all kinds of commitments, all kinds of demands on our time. And I don't know about you, but our work doesn't stay at work anymore, does it? It comes home with us on our laptops and our smartphones. So we're constantly switched on, constantly connected. And when we're home from work, there's all the housework to do, voluntary stuff we do, life admin to catch up on. I don't know, is it just me, or has there been a massive increase in what we might call life admin, forms to fill in, bills to sort out, insurance, just things to sort out to do with our lives, and it just creeps into our whole lives. And of course, many of us have responsibilities, people we're caring for, whether that be children or ageing parents or spouses or friends and neighbours. None of these things are bad. Our work is not bad. Our caring responsibilities, of course, are not bad. You know, our voluntary work, the things that we do for church, are not bad. But the danger is that we can end up being so busy and constantly connected that we never really take the time to rest and worship, to delight in God, and to restore our bodies, minds and spirits. And I think the other thing about our culture today is that we've forgotten how to really rest properly, to rest well. And I know for myself, I seem to have two kinds of rest. Good, real rest on the one hand, and rubbishy, fake rest on the other hand. And you'll recognise this. The rubbishy, fake rest usually involves some sort of screen. Usually it involves collapsing exhausted in front of the TV, watching something I don't really want to watch, but I've just got no energy to look for something that's good. I might just flick aimlessly between the channels, and then I end up like staying up later than I really intended to because I can't be bothered to go to bed. And then I fall asleep on the sofa and I just feel disgusting. I don't know if anybody else has had that experience. Or the other thing that is like rubbishy fake rest is just being on my phone and like aimlessly scrolling through news websites or social media, reading headlines but not really much else, clicking from one thing to the next, letting the algorithms control what I'm thinking about, what I'm exposing my thoughts to. There's a word for that, and it is doom scrolling. And it is not real rest. Here are some things I know for myself are really restful. And it might be different for you, but here's some things for me. Having proper sleep, being out in nature, getting outdoors, going for a walk, or even just looking out the window at the birds in the garden. Doing something creative, making something. Reading a good book, reading some Bible, reading some poetry. Playing a game with my family, my children. Okay, so that's not always restful, but often it is fun and we end up laughing a lot, you know. Having a long chat with a good friend, for me that is restful. Preferably face to face, but phone will do. Watching a good film that I want to watch. Listening to some lovely music, maybe worship music, but not necessarily. Better still, playing music, playing musical instruments or singing, worshipping God. Having a bath, just sitting with God or sitting with my daughter who is good at just being quiet and hugging. All of those things for me bring real rest, and I need real rest, not rubbishy fake rest. But often I'm lured by the screens into online spaces that I don't really want to be in, seduced by the clickbait or the headlines, and my rest is eaten up by distraction. The other lie that the enemy tells me is that I can't afford to take time to rest. Often in our lives, time seems scarce and I just think, oh, I can't afford to rest today. I can't afford to take this day off. Just look at my to-do list. I should be doing this, this and this. I ought to be doing this. If I don't do this today, something dreadful is going to happen. The world's going to fall apart. So I don't have time to rest. I need to keep going, keep going, keep going. And anyway, I'm working for God. I'm doing good churchy things. So he must surely want me to do as much of it as possible, to fill every waking moment with activity. Let's have a look at our reading from Exodus 16, which we read earlier. So, of course, the people of Israel are in the wilderness. That's the context for this. Let's think for a moment about where they have come from. God has brought them out of slavery in Egypt, and he's bringing them to his place of rest in the promised land. Do you remember what it was like in Egypt? In Egypt, they had to work. And not just any old work, but terrible, back-breaking work of slavery. Listen to this. This is from Exodus chapter 1, verses 11 to 14. So they put slave masters over them to oppress them with forced labour, and they built Pithom and Ramesses as store cities for Pharaoh. But the more they were oppressed, the more they multiplied and spread. So the Egyptians came to dread the Israelites and worked them ruthlessly. They made their lives bitter with harsh labour in brick and mortar and with all kinds of work in the fields. In all their harsh labour, the Egyptians worked them ruthlessly. They were slaves, and they cried out to God, and God has heard their cry and has set them free. He's brought them through the waters of the Red Sea, and he's leading them now to Canaan, the promised land, where they're going to have rest. But to get there, they have to go through the wilderness. And in the wilderness, God is teaching them to trust him. Now, it's only a few weeks since God rescued them from Egypt when we get to Exodus chapter 16. But we see the people of Israel are already grumbling and complaining and wishing that they could be back there in that state of slavery. Their memories are so short, aren't they? But God wants to teach them that they can trust him for their daily bread. So, verse 11, chapter 16 now, verse 11 of Exodus. The Lord said to Moses, I have heard the grumbling of the Israelites. Tell them this, at twilight you will eat meat, and in the morning you will be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God. So he's saying he's going to provide for them each day. And then it happens, doesn't it? So in the evening, these massive flocks of quail, these birds, come down and cover the camp, and they're able to eat as much meat as they wish to. And then in the morning, God literally provides their daily bread, this manna, this strange dew that covers the ground and then ends up being bread. So the command that God gives them in verse 16 is for each person to gather enough for themselves, just enough for one person for one day. And Moses specifically tells them in verse 19, no one is to keep any of it until morning. But then typically, what do? They don't do what they're told. It says, verse 20, however, some of them paid no attention to Moses. They kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. So Moses was angry with them. Nice. But do you see how the Israelites here are being trained? They're being trained to depend on God for each day. God has promised that if they will just obey him, then he will give them what they need. They don't need to clutch at things and hold on to them. They don't need to overdo it and work to gather more and more and more manna. God will provide for them the next day and the next day and the next day. They can trust him. God is faithful. So he's getting them here into a daily rhythm of work and rest. Each day has its fair share of work in gathering the manna. But then they stop. When they've got enough, they stop, trusting that God will provide for them the next day. And there's always enough for everyone. And of course, when Jesus teaches his disciples to pray, what does he say we should pray? Give us this day our daily bread. And that's supposed to remind us of this story. The disciples would have known this story back to front. This is like their DNA. And they would go, yes, daily bread. We're supposed to think of this story, trusting God to faithfully provide for our needs day by day. Just enough, always enough, not worrying about the future. I know that when I cram a day with too much work, too many things, and push it, so I'm squeezing too many things in, then the things that I do suffer. If you like, they become rotten and maggoty. On the surface, I'm doing stuff, I'm ticking boxes, maybe it looks good. But I know that actually I don't have the time to really do them well. I don't have the time to listen to God and discern where he's at work in those things. I might squeeze in a pastoral visit to someone, but I'll be distracted and worrying about the next thing. I might plan a talk or an assembly, but I'm rushing and scrabbling around for ideas, and it makes it difficult to actually do the right thing and say the right thing. God says, just enough for one day. Don't try and gather too much. It'll go rotten. It won't last. Some of us, I'm talking to myself here, some of us need to start admitting our limitations, that we are not God, that we can't actually do everything. We need to start realising our bodies are not like superhuman. We need to start saying no to things. That's not everybody. For some of us, it's the opposite. And actually, we need to wake up and we need to start getting out there and doing what God is calling us to do. But some of us, we're doing too much and we need to put a few things down and we need to start living within our limits and recognising that we can't do everything. I think I'm getting a bit better at this, but I'm not there yet. I still get it wrong. So the people of Israel, they have this daily rhythm of work and rest, of gathering the manna, gathering the quail, trusting in God just enough for one day. But on the 6th day of the week, something interesting happens. This is in verse 22 onwards. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much, 2 omers for each person. And the leaders of the community came and reported this to Moses. And Moses said to them, "This is what the Lord commanded. Tomorrow is to be a day of Sabbath rest, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. So bake what you want to bake and boil what you want to boil. Save whatever is left and keep it until morning." Now this is a big exercise in trust that they're being asked to make right here, isn't it? Because remember what happened before when they tried to save some of the manna until morning. It was rotten, it was stinky, it was maggoty, it was disgusting. So basically God is asking them to trust him for a miracle here. Basically, or you're going to be super hungry the next day. Trust me, God says. And what happens? Sure enough, God comes through again, verse 24. So they saved it until morning as Moses commanded, and it did not stink this time or get maggots in it. "Eat it today," Moses said, "because today is a Sabbath to the Lord. You will not find any of it on the ground today. 6 days you are to gather it, but on the 7th day, the Sabbath, there will not be any." So, what do the Israelites discover here? They discover that they can trust God. They discover that if they actually obey God's commands and take him at his word, even though it might seem illogical, there will always be enough. God provides. God does it. They don't have to do it on the Sabbath day. Now, my day off or Sabbath at the moment is usually a Saturday because Sundays to me are quite often pretty busy, as you can imagine. But quite often I feel like, I can't afford to take a full day off on a Saturday. Maybe I'm not quite ready yet for Sunday and there are things I feel like I still need to prepare, or emails I want to send, or like I said before, life admin that I want to do, or I think I need to clean the whole house or something. And I have this worry that if I take the time off to rest, there won't be enough time. I won't get everything done. It's never going to work. But what I've found is that if I do trust God and take the day, take the time to rest and worship, real rest, not rubbishy fake rest, if I put my phone away, if I spend time doing the things that I know bring me life and joy and rest, if I spend time with God, delighting in him, then he always comes through. And what I've found is God helps me. He seems to be able to bend time in a way, or provide in a way so that there will always be enough time to get the things done that I need to get done. There's always enough. I can trust him. And this is something I'm still learning, and I often get it wrong. And I try to take back control for myself instead of trusting in God. But I'm learning that God is usually wiser than me, and it's better to obey him than rebel and do my own thing, rebel against him. Verse 27. Nevertheless, some of the people went out on the 7th day, typical, to gather it, but they found none. And the Lord said to Moses, "How long will you refuse to keep my commands and my instructions? Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. That is why on the 6th day he gives you bread for 2 days. Everyone is to stay where they are on the 7th day. No one is to go out." So the people rested on the 7th day. The Lord has given you the Sabbath. Bear in mind that the Lord has given you the Sabbath. God knows what is good for the Israelites. He knows what is good for you and me. Obedience to God is freedom. And God wants us to rest. Our work, paid work, but even voluntary work or work we do for the church or housework or life admin can become slavery. God cares for us. He knows that we are frail human beings with physical and mental limitations. We can't do it all. But so often we put ourselves back under slavery because we don't trust God. We don't trust that He'll provide for us, and we don't take the rest that we need. In Mark chapter 6, Jesus sends out his 12 disciples on a mission trip, and they go round the villages and they're preaching and they're healing, they're driving out evil spirits, doing all this ministry work. And they come back eager to report to Jesus everything they've been doing. But look at what Jesus' response is. This is Mark chapter 6, verse 30. The apostles gathered round Jesus and reported to him everything they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going that they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest. Maybe those words are the words Jesus is speaking to some of us today. Maybe we're trying to do everything, trying to do God's work for him. The good news for today is that we don't have to do everything. We have a God who cares about our well-being. He's given us this gift of Sabbath rest and invited us into it. And he wants us to take time to rest, to worship him, to enjoy his good gifts and be blessed. God blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Now, I'm not naive. I know this is complicated. It's complicated if you work shifts. It's complicated if you have to work several jobs to make ends meet. And it's especially complicated if you have caring responsibilities of any kind, small children or whatever. You might need to do things a bit differently. But also, this is perhaps where we as a church should be helping one another, working together to enable one another to get the rest that we need. And Sabbath is also a great time to spend together as church family, both here in worship on a Sunday, if Sunday is your day, or also just over meals in one another's homes, resting together, enjoying one another's company, enjoying meals together. How might we do this? How might we work this holy habit of Sabbath into our lives? Jesus says, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." Amen.